Joining us now, she's of course a former two-time All-American, was at Pacific, of course, is one of the greats there in that school. And of course, the current head coach at Santa Clara and has done also been part of the Great Britain national team. I speak of Gina Carbonatto, joining us here for the first time on In the Circle. How you doing?
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me here. I appreciate it.
Well, you're part of this big Pacific alumni that we've had on the shows here before, but you obviously are connected to all of them. I kind of want to start with that a little bit because you played obviously for Coach Kolze and coached under him at Pacific. You also coached under Coach Tarr, who was on the staff of Coach Kolze at one point. And then you and probably Sydney Ball-Malone could say you're the two greatest players in the history of that program. That's a nice little tree you got going over there.
Hey, I'm just happy I'm part of it. They're the ones that have been doing it and teaching me, and then I guess I get to learn from the best. So, yeah, I've learned from a lot of the greats.
That's a pretty good. We'll talk a little bit about them later on, but let's talk about your team here. You're going to get set soon here for the fall. You've had a busy off season, as we'll get to as well, with the Great Britain national team. But first, how do you feel about this team going into this season as you get set for the fall and obviously into 2023?
Sure. Well, we had one of our best showings last year. So we're coming off a really good finish last year in the WCC play, as well as Santa Clara having the most wins in a season since I think 2006. So I'm starting to see a lot of that success. We got great people a part of this program. So that's where it starts. It starts from our athletics director down to our deputy athletics director, everybody who's been involved. Our coaches really love coaching the game. And then our players are just special humans. I mean, they're dedicated both athletically and academically, which make them really fun to coach and see their growth over their career. And so when I think about where we've gotten in a short 3 years here since I got hired, um, along with COVID kind of stunting a little bit of that growth, we're a really old team because we have 8 quote unquote seniors, some of them for their first time a senior, some of them second time a senior, and one of them are third time technically. So she's a sixth year. So we got a lot of age and wisdom on our team, which is really, really fantastic for um, seeing the growth and continuing the trajectory that we're on. But then we have a group of 7 freshmen. So we're really heavy on both the old and the young. And so it'll be nice to see our old people impart their wisdom on the young ones and then let them kind of keep going in the upward trajectory that we're on right now. So it's going to be an interesting lot of age and a lot of youth here.
You mentioned third place finish last year, and for those that don't know, you took over this program in June of 2019, and as you mentioned, your first year gets interrupted with COVID. So I mean, you kind of were on a pause there for a while, which is tough when you're starting the program. So where do you feel the program is now compared to when you took over the program?
We're just more talented with depth. I think that's the big thing is we've been able to keep a lot of our best players in the program. We haven't really lost our talent over the years, even with the transfer portal. People who've been at Santa Clara love Santa Clara and they stay at Santa Clara. And so that's really helpful for the growth. And then we've been able to add some pretty cool pieces to the puzzle over the last 2 years with these freshmen coming in. We haven't really transferred in a ton of players either. So we rely on that recruiting process and getting good people that are just more talented as a whole. So the team gets better when you have depth that is also talented pushing you.
Who are some of the players that the audiences can look forward to seeing when they see your team this upcoming season that you think will lead the way on the field as well as even off the field from a leadership standpoint?
Yeah, so our seniors, I said we're really heavy in senior leadership, and I mean, there's a ton of them. We're gonna lose a lot of great softball players and great people in the senior year, the senior class. Ashley Trueweiler, career batting average of 400 plus. She's just been unstoppable for the 3 years she's been here. She can play outfield, she can play infield, she can hit for power, she can slap. So she's just a dynamic, very, very dynamic player. So she's really fun to coach and to watch, as well as our other middle infielders slash corners, Emma Bickford and Allison Ferreira, 2 seniors who've been playing since their freshman year. So a lot of talent there. And then we have two all conference pitchers from last year. Technically, both were freshmen by eligibility. So Sage Hager and then Hannah Edwards, who's a fourth year this year, but she was a freshman eligibility due to COVID last year. So them in the circle have really led our team. And then, oh man, let's see. We had an outfielder who made all conference last year for the first time. She was a JC transfer, Lauren LaHood. So got some good talent there. Yeah, we only graduated 3 players from last year, so a lot of returning starters, and only one of them was a starter on a regular basis. The other 2 were pitchers.
Yeah, I looked at last year. You took a game from Loyola Marymount at the end of the last regular season where they needed to win to clinch the title, and you made them sweat. You gave BYU all they can handle. I bring those 2 up because those have been the 2 top programs in the league. Does that give you the confidence to your group that says we're not that far away? We could be that team now to challenge for that championship, especially since Loyola showed BYU could be dethroned. This makes it more wide open.
Yeah, I think the BYU, we played them first last year, and it was a unique trip for us going to BYU for the last time while they're in the WCC. And game 1, they just kind of throttled us, and we came back and we bounced back, and we were 1 clutch hit away from tying the game in both game 2 and 3. So I think that gave us that little bit of confidence, like, wow, we were really close to the long time WCC, conference champions year after year, even though LMU had the number 1 spot in the league after their first series. And then we go to LMU the last weekend out, and we take game 1, and we really put them on a fearful ride for game 2 and 3, where again we were a couple clutch hits with the tying run on base late in the game. So we were right there, and I think what you said is the key piece, that our players know that we're right there. So as coaches, we've done this long enough that we've seen it. We know our talent level. We know when we can play with any opponent, but the players all saw it, I think, for the first time last year. So 3rd place was a good finish, but it was definitely more like that taste in your mouth. Like we can win this conference next year.
Yeah, not that far away. You mentioned this will be BYU's last year in the West Coast Conference before they move on to the Big 12. How weird is that going to be? And what is the league of future looking like from that point, adjusting to that?
It's going to be interesting. We'll drop down to a 5-conference team at that point, which brings some concern around automatic qualifying bid to postseason. But we think right now we got to take it year by year with the transformation of the NC2A and many teams across the country shuffling conferences. We think it'll kind of get sorted out in the meantime, but we'll miss them for the success in softball specifically that BYU's had over its career. So we'll miss competing with one of the best teams in the country in conference. However, I think that gives our conference a little more parity. They had football. Really, the rest of us are more like schools. So I think having more like schools competing against each other creates a little bit more of that level playing field where any team that's having a great year could win.
No doubt. Wide open league there. You get to face Pacific. How has that been like? To face your old coach there, Coach Kolze there every season? I know you've gotten used to it, but it's got to be a little strange, doesn't it? Especially when you go there.
Yeah. I mean, he's such a good guy, and he's been such an important part of my career, both as a player and a coach, that there's good, heartfelt enjoyment of being there at Pacific as well as playing against Coach Kolze. But at the same time, there's no better point in your coaching career than when you get to beat your alma mater, or you get to compete with who you bled orange and black for many of your years. So on the games that we are playing them, maybe there's a little bit more of that chip, and I want to win a little bit more, but any other game I'm rooting for them to win every game, not only because they're a conference opponent, we want our conference's opponents to do as well as they can throughout the season, but I still love Pacific, and I always will, so I always want them to do well, and Coach Kolze's been a great coach in the sport of softball, and has had so much success over his career that I want him to do a great job throughout the time of which he has left here coaching this wonderful sport.
The thing that struck me was last year they celebrated his 30th season and they did this big event for him social media wise. And Coach Ball-Malone was there. I think you were there. Coach Tarr. I mean, that speaks volumes that how much he means to a lot of people, doesn't it? That you're taking time out of your busy schedules to go congratulate him on that, 30 years.
Yeah, I mean, it was us, his coaching tree, we all came, but he also had dozens of his players, former players, as well as his current team there. And he knows he's got a good group of people behind him because he's such a good guy and he cares deeply about his players. So it's easy to support him until the game's on.
Let's talk about you. What you got you interested in playing softball growing up?
My brother is a year and a half older and he played baseball. So I actually played on his little league, like T-ball team. So whatever he did, I wanted to do. And he was a pretty good baseball player himself. So I started in baseball until softball was kind of more an option and transitioned over. It was when I was 8 years old and then played softball ever since. But it was 100%, wanted to do anything my brother did. And if I could beat him once out of 10 times, I was happy.
How'd you end up going to Pacific?
So Coach Tarr was there, and she's from Washington, and I'm from Washington as well. So I had known her a little bit, and so there was that little bit of that Washington connection when she was the assistant at Pacific, and I actually was being heavily recruited by Stanford, and Coach Rittman was the head coach then, and Coach Lonnie Alameda was the assistant there, who was also, I mean, I had some really good conversations with her as well. And I just didn't quite have the SAT scores to go to Stanford. So they were like, you got to recruit this kid. And so Kolze and Rittman were really good friends at the time. They all worked hand in hand together. Stanford, Pacific, played each other every year. And so Kolze and Coach Tarr came and watched me a handful of times in the summer, and then off I went.
That's pretty cool. I think I've heard this variation of this story from Coach Rittman when I spoke to him a couple of years ago. Because you're right, he kind of took some players. Him and Coach Kolze, he gave you credit for you and Coach Ball-Malone because he was recruiting Jessica Mendoza at the time. So you all have like this great bubble here, like circle of life. You mentioned Coach Tarr. You're one of the few that's known Coach Tarr when she was an assistant at Pacific. You would reunite with her later at Washington. What was it like knowing Coach Tarr back then?
She's just got a great mind. She's special. She's talented in ways not only when it comes to softball. I mean, she's creative and she's artistic and she can speak multiple languages and she just has so much to her that makes her really good at her job. And so when she was my assistant, I feel like she got her love of softball kind of osmosis into me. And it's funny, I did all I could not to be a softball coach and follow that path. Like that was my goal, was to be a strength and conditioning coach, because I loved coaching and I loved college sport, but I just knew how hard coaching was and the dedication and time commitment that it takes to be a great coach. Because I had seen both Coach Kolze, Coach Ball at the time was my assistant as well, Coach Tarr, and then she took over at University of Washington, and I watched her first few years at Washington, and I was like, I'm just not cut out to be a coach. And so I tried strength and conditioning a little bit. Actually, that's how I ended up at UW. I was a volunteer intern in the weight room my first year, and I was like, hey, Coach Tarr, I'm coming up there. I'm going to be a volunteer in the weight room. What about being your volunteer coach? And she's like, you want to do this? I was like, I want to do it. And so from then on, I stayed with her for the 3 years, the '09 national championship. And as an assistant, I think she was the spark of my success as a player. And then as a boss, I guess she was kind of that spark of continuing my love for the sport through the coaching aspect.
That's incredible. I did not know that was big inspiration. I mean, have you thought about that? What if? Like you got to play for Coach Kolze, Coach Tarr, Coach Ball-Malone was on that staff. Not many could say that. That's pretty good, and they've all done pretty well for themselves since.
Yeah, yeah. I say it. I had the best coaching staff in the country at the time. I mean, for them to go on their own paths and see what they've done, they're all pretty special and just great coaches. And so I'm sure that kind of had that trickle down effect into myself and while I'm still doing this.
What was it being around Coach Ball at that time? Is it because she was set the benchmark so high at that program? They were within a win away of the World Series. She was a multi-time All-American herself, and now you're following that a little bit. You ended up doing your own, legacy run there. But what was it like being around her, who is one of the signature players in the history of the program?
Well, the fun part of it is she pitched. She could also hit, clearly. She was a great hitter as well. But she pitched to me in practice all the time. So I think that's where I got to see what the best were like day in, day out in practice. So, she would throw to me live ABs after eight live ABs. And so I got to hit off her for 3 years before she left Pacific to continue coaching elsewhere. But yeah, so she was our pitching coach. But to me, not being a pitcher, she just threw to me a bunch, and it made me a lot better hitter.
Did that get competitive? Because I've seen her at practice. She could get competitive there. Did they get a little competitive, the two of you there?
Yeah, so we actually did have kind of a bet. There was the 5-6 hole. So when you're slapping, right, you're trying to hit the 5-6 hole, and we'd either put a net out there that was the target, and we made like joking bets, of course, but we were like, all right, got to hit it for Tiger's yogurt. So there was this ice cream shop or frozen yogurt shop, and I loved frozen yogurt, and clearly she must have as well. But it was like anytime I did hit it, I earned myself some Tiger's yogurt, so that was kind of our joke. But yeah, we like to give each other a hard time, and then she, pitch it between her legs. I don't know if you've ever heard this, but she can like throw the ball between her legs.
No, no, this is breaking news here.
It's like a trick pitch, okay? And so she would do that to me and like fool me with. So yeah, she has a good trick pitch. You got to go see that.
Okay, I will bring this up next time I see her there. She did tell me, and this was a quote. She says that you're one of her favorite people to coach. That coach is so competitive, always smiling. She has some other stories, but we'll leave that for off air. But what describe yourself as a player for those that didn't get to watch? And I'm curious how you feel you've changed from Gina, as a coach versus when you were a player.
Ooh, I guess there's been a lot of changes. Um, when I played for Coach Tarr, Coach Kolze, and Coach Ball at Pacific, I would say I was kind of that young, very energetic, but a little bit naive of what the world of softball was. Like I just was so engrossed in like how to get a job done and compete and be the best I could be at any given point. And so I didn't really see the big picture of maybe how good I was or how good I could be, but they did. And that's why I think they were such great coaches. And so they coached me to be great. And as success started coming throughout my playing career, I got a little bit more confidence. And I would say that confidence kind of was built on having a little bit of a naive mindset of what the game was all about. Like I just wanted to play the game. So I was a big fan of just kind of getting the opportunity to play and compete. And as I graduated at Pacific, I had the opportunity to play in the pro league. So it was the NPF at the time for 2 years. And I think by that time I really grew into like a loud, I called myself obnoxious, like players always like, I'm glad you're on my team. I would hate to play against you. And so I kind of had a little bit of that like feisty, competitive nature. And that definitely bled into my coaching. But when it came to coaching, it was just like a ton of energy. So as an assistant coach, you can be fired up on a regular basis and you can be, pushing the players, getting out there, showing them how to do it actually. Physically, and as I've become a head coach, it's kind of transitioned again because I can't quite do it like I used to be able to do it. but I can still, do it at a slower pace, maybe. But I'm a happy human. I love what I do. And so I would say passion and energy come out in me in all forms, whether it's coaching or playing or, um, I guess doing a math problem. Like
Sure,
I
sure.
love the fight in there, and like I want to get it right, but I love being part of it.
It's funny you bring up your profession with the New England Riptide. You played in the NPF the 2 seasons. I remember you. That was the first time I recognized you as a name because I was following that team because they had a player named Stephanie Best
Oh yeah.
played at UCF. Who was your teammates? You were teammates.
We actually weren't. She had left there and played
Oh,
elsewhere.
just left, moved on. That's right. That's what it
Yep.
was.
But we played against each other as
Yes,
well. So yeah,
yes.
stellar career, Steph Best. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's how I remember watching you in the pros. And you mentioned obviously the college. You go and you stay in coaching. You get the bug. You go to Washington, where you were part of that national championship staff in 2009, where obviously Danielle Laurie, the star player, Jen Salling, who's now an assistant at UCF. Laurie obviously has gone on. She's done very well for herself. What was it like to be a part of that coaching staff to win that national championship in 2009 for Coach Tarr?
It's a special group. It's a special time. Takes the right pieces put together at the right time. And, one of the things that I think taught me or that I learned out of that was it's the intangibles that win championships. And it's not always the numbers that are going to win you a championship, but the people that are involved, the commitment level, the belief. And so I would say, all those things combined allowed us to go on a run. And it takes a hot hand, some clutch hitting, and we had that in that special group of '09 players as well as coaches. Our coaching staff was fabulous. We got along really, really well. We complemented each other. We had our areas of expertise, and we ran with it. We had a good group.
A great special group. You would move on after they go back to Pacific to be on that staff, and then you would go on eventually to be UC Davis, and then eventually get the head coaching job at Santa Clara. Was a head coach your goal once you were an assistant coach, and what was it about Santa Clara that you felt this was the right move for me?
It's hard to get a head coaching job. Let's just say that. Like I think about that, and it's not easy, and a lot of great coaches maybe never get the opportunity, or maybe they don't even know they want to be head coaches, but it's really challenging. And so I would say, there was a time of which I knew I wanted to try it. I was like, I got to try being a head coach. I've learned from so many great coaches. You add in Coach Thorpe there. You said UC Davis, and she taught me a ton about, the business side. I think going straight from Davis to here, I think she had a good influence on, how I structure the business side of being a head coach. So I relied on her a lot, as well as the softball side, where I had learned so much from the previous coaches that we've talked so much about. But I wanted to try it because I thought I got to combine all this knowledge and give it a go and make it kind of my philosophy and my vision. Um, and I wouldn't say I always knew I wanted to be a head coach. That's not at all the path that I've taken. I haven't even always said I wanted to be a softball coach. I mentioned the strength and conditioning, but I also taught high school PE for a couple years. So I just think it's where life leads you, and when opportunities come, you can jump on them. And specifically at Santa Clara, what was so great about this opportunity was it fits my view of what a holistic student athlete should be. So they're passionate about school, about softball, also their career. And so here, being in the Silicon Valley, and Santa Clara University being such a prestigious institution in the heart of the tech capital of the world, we graduate people and they are right launching into careers, and I think Santa Clara is great at that. And then it allows Santa Clara softball also to be great at that. That I know my athletes, when they graduate here, they're not just graduating with a degree, but a great opportunity to go into the working world, no matter what field that may be. And so I think that fits with the holistic view that I have of what college sport is. And part of that is influenced, as I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about, but the world view of being a part of a national team program in Europe, and America's the only country that does college sport like this. Other countries, it's a lot more like club sport, and so I have a little bit more of that knowledge base, and so I like that Santa Clara is not only a softball or a sport related like entity. It cares so much more about the whole human and their graduation and their future career, and that's hard to do, but I think it's just kind of where it falls in the country too. It's a great location.
Great location there. You mentioned the global side. You've been a part of the Great Britain national team on the national team side since 2018, and you've been involved with them maybe even for a while now. What was it that got you interested in being involved with them and helping them grow that program? And you've had success building there with some great players. Obviously, Gina Carbonatto, probably the most recognizable one, but you've had a couple of your players there.
Yeah.
Katie Birch, who's another talented player. You're starting to get some talented players there to build softball there. What got you interested in being involved there?
Yeah, it's kind of a couple things. One, Amy Moore, who also has played long time in the GB program, was the catcher at University of the Pacific when I was coaching there. So I coached her, and she went kind of right into it. And I didn't know GB softball at that time, but she was playing for years before I kind of got my foot in the door. And the way I got my foot in the door was they were building this under 22s team. So the team that takes that youth age and then bridges the gap before the women's national team, that's competing for world championships and the Olympics and stuff. So they were building a new program, and I thought, man, I'll put my name in the hat for the head job. And at the time, they wanted someone who was UK based, which made sense. So they said, would you still be interested just as an assistant? And I was like, absolutely. Like, this is a great opportunity to grow the game of softball beyond um, just college in the United States. So that's kind of how I saw it. I took the opportunity. It was a volunteer basis, as most national programs are in the sport of softball, and so I volunteered starting in 18, and been on a few tours now. And yeah, Katie Burge she's a fun one, because I mean, I then got to recruit her when I was at UC Davis. So we were trying to get her, but I also told Coach Ball, I was like, this kid's right in your backyard and she's pretty good. So I tried to get her to come across the country, but I have since recruited and also found some more British citizens, and they're at Santa Clara. So it's interesting. Hannah Edwards, the pitcher I talked about, I coached her in Italy before I took over here. So she was already committed to Santa Clara. Morgan Salmon, one of our young stud infielders, I coached in Canada, and then I started recruiting her to come to Santa Clara. So that was pretty cool. And then Cameron McGinnis I was recruiting her at Santa Clara and found out she was Scottish, and so got her involved in the program. So it's been pretty cool how you find many people when you start putting yourself out there. So as a GB coach, I started finding more British people, and I'm not British, so a lot of people think like, oh, it's because you're British. I'm not. My wife's British, but that's not
Right.
how I got involved. So yeah, people even yesterday, like 2 days ago, people were like, oh, so you're British. I'm like, nah, I'm not.
Yeah, they just connect. I hear you on that totally. What is the next step for not only for Great Britain but even European softball? You've been at the European Championships. What's the next step? And we've had Michelle Smith on. She feels that's the next step, is to get the interest going in the European side to make this a annual Olympic sport, if you will. From your point of view, what's the next step?
That's I wish I knew, because we probably would be taking it right now. Um, to be honest, having more eyes on the European Championship, I think getting that streamed. I mean, every game was streamed this year, but there's 27 countries playing. Like it's not actually there were 17 at ours, I think. So it's it's not that they're not playing, it's that it's not seen enough.
Right.
Um, and then, if there are American dual citizens, that they know that it's an opportunity for them to continue playing is the other piece that we gotta we gotta get all the talent that we can over there without saying that it's an American team. It's not. It's a matter of getting talent and then growing the sport so that people in European countries grow up saying, I want to be like that. And I think that's the key, like the growth from the ground up, of which Italy's doing it. The Netherlands have done it. Czech has done a great job with their youth softball. So if you invest in the youth softball in European countries, they'll get better fast. And with a few, American dual citizens, I think you can get some good talent out there, and the product is fabulous. And so it's just a matter of getting a little bit more, I guess, eyes on the European Championships that could really help, I guess, take off so that softball stays an Olympic sport. That's the hardest part. Is we need a lot of countries that want
Yeah.
it an Olympic sport, not just the handful.
Yeah, and the attendance was good too this year's championships, just watching the highlights there as well. So it's maybe step by step. Well, I'll definitely get you back on with more time to go more in depth on that, because I know you've got some stories there. And you're right, get the word out, I think, is a big part. But I know you're worried about getting ready for the fall here in this season. So that'll be my last question to you is, what are going to be some of the keys for this year's team to accomplish your internal goals?
Keys. I think it's going to be trust, trusting what we have done in the past, and then trusting each other. So every team's a new team. So the past doesn't mean we're going to be as good or better. It just means that we've learned and we've gained knowledge, and therefore trusting that and trusting the team and the coaching staff that we've built here. We have our first full-time coaching staff ever at Santa Clara. So I hired a hitting coach. She just began. Coach Villar, she was at South Dakota State, won 2 conference championships the last 2 years, went to postseason. So having one more person on staff who is full time that can complement the pieces we've been putting in place, I think is going to be crucial. And the hitters trusting a new coach to come in here and help them grow to that next step, because that's really what it takes. And I would say, as always, you got to pitch well and you got to hit well in clutch situations. So we've got the pieces that we need. Now it's just a matter of putting them together, and I think really trusting that we could do it.
That's big too, catching Coach Villar and having a full staff. That's a game changer for your program.
Hey, I can't say enough about Santa Clara University investing in softball in the last couple years, and more in the future to come. And coaches really help. Scholarships really help. Our facilities have gotten significantly better. So it's a great place to host people. It's a great place to train as an athlete. And I think that's going to be, the pieces are in place, they say, and the bodies are here. It's just a matter of now getting to go do it.
That's pretty good. Pretty good. Have you met Steve Nash, by the way? I have to ask every time Santa Clara comes up. I mean, he comes up. I have to ask. That'll be my last question.
No, but I've met Brandy Chastain.
All right, that's good. That's good. That's a good comeback.
No, actually, he hasn't come by that I've seen, but of course, his jersey's all over the place and stuff too. So
All right,
I haven't met him yet.
All right,
I bet he will.
He's coaching basketball. That's the issue. He's coaching basketball. We'll have to fix that down the road.
Yeah, Jalen Williams, just got drafted in the NBA, so he's been around, and so he actually still comes by, and so he's a great guy. So yeah, I know Jalen. We'll go with that.
Let's go. Hey, that's a good start. Well, that's a good work there, Coach. Hey, thanks so much for taking the time. I know it's a busy schedule as you get everything organized and set to go for the fall, and before you know it, the start of the 2023 season. But it was always a pleasure to talk to you. We wanted to have you on for a while. We'll definitely get you back on to get more in-depth stories there. Maybe we'll have to do like a Pacific reunion podcast at some point, but if they allow us to get through that one. But thanks for talking to us.
Thanks, Eric, and I guess at this point, game on.